I'm John McKee, editor of Messianic Apologetics, messianicapologetics.net. And I would like to welcome you to this episode of Messianic Insider, your theology and news roundup for June the 16th, 2025. And oh my goodness, what a time to be alive. What a weekend it has been. So we have a great deal to cover this afternoon as we catch up from what has taken place over the past few days. Certainly there are many things people are talking about, wondering about. This is not only a time for us to see history unfold and for us to remember what we have witnessed, but it is also an important time for all of us to press into the Lord. There are a few important lessons I believe he wants to teach us during this season, and most especially for us to evaluate what kingdom assignments and kingdom work he would have us do. Okay, so we've been doing this regularly every Monday. If you have not already, please do go to messianicapologetics.net. Here in the right-hand column, you see blog notifications. Be automatically notified by email when Messianic Apologetics is updated. You can put your email address there, hit subscribe. Whenever we add a new post or reintroduce something to the Messianic Apologetics website, you will be automatically notified. This is different from our email discussion list, our email update list, sorry, which you can subscribe to right there, clicking on the envelope icon. Those are things we have to specifically put together. But subscribe to the blog notifications so you can stay up to date with everything we have got going on. Okay, so we're going to have a brief theology roundup before we get into reviewing a lot of the news from the past weekend. What happened at your local Messianic congregation or synagogue this past weekend? Did you pray for Israel? Did you pray for Iran? Did you pray for the world? Now, everyone's situation is different. Everyone's local Messianic congregational leadership is different. I have no doubting the fact that everyone prayed for Israel. You prayed for the safety of the Jewish community, the Messianic Jewish community, even people like those at the U.S. Embassy in Jerusalem, etc. What kind of talk did you possibly have at Oneg, your fellowship mealtime, if you've got that? What did you discuss when you interacted with different friends and different acquaintances? How many people at your local assembly prayed for the Iranians? Because this conflict, which has started between Israel and Iran, it has to do with the theocratic Islamo-fascist leaders of Iran. It doesn't have to necessarily do with the people of Iran, many of whom are oppressed by this despotic regime and they want to see it gone. So did you pray for the Iranians? Likewise, are you praying for the world? Because even though there is a huge amount of end-time speculation on the part of many right now, what we doubtlessly can all agree on is history is unfolding. And not only is history unfolding, but when this is all over, we are going to see a different Middle East. And what I believe is that Middle East is going to then pave the way for some of the end-time expectations many people have. So, indeed, Everyone's situation, everyone's circumstances are different, but what did you do this past week at your local congregation? What did you pray for? What did you not pray for? How many are using what is taking place right now as a prompt to actually consider when we are in history? A lot of dramas have taken place in the past 5 years. I've commonly abbreviated them as CEVT and now I. Do we need to add a second I to that? There are people, and we're actually going to be going through some of this when we hit the news roundup. There are some people who are at least floating the idea that the conflict of Ezekiel 38 and 39, Gog and Magog, is right around the corner. Certainly, there are many people out there who are claiming that the pre-tribulation rapture is right around the corner. And then there are many who are not paying attention at all, not even to what we would regard as mainstream media, mainstream news. They're just going through life the way they always have. And, well, we're just going to focus on studying Torah right now. The world, that's for the Goyim kind of attitude. No, it doesn't work like that. We do need to be paying attention. We do need to be reserved in some of the conclusions we may draw, but this is not a time to act as though some significant world changes are not underway. As I have reflected back on the past few days, especially this past weekend, with wondering, what's going on? What are we doing? What about this? What about that? Our family has been involved in the Messianic movement since 1995 for a whole lot more reasons than just wanting to connect to our faith heritage in the scriptures of Israel and appreciate things like Torah. Okay, we're in the Messianic movement for a lot more important reasons than that. Some of you all have heard our family story, how we got involved in the Messianic community almost 30 years ago, 1995, during the fall high holidays, and just a few months, a month and a half actually, before entering into the Messianic community, our family shifted in our eschatology from believing in a pre-tribulation rapture to adhering to a post-tribulational position. And so the end times have always been locked to our Messianic experience. They've always been an important part of our Messianic experience. And one of the, I think, reasons why that is the case is, when you are non-Jewish believers and God calls you into the Messianic movement, it's great to connect to your faith heritage in the scriptures of Israel, getting involved in things like Torah study and Shabbat and the festivals and what have you. But you also give up a lot because the Messianic community, even 30 years later now for us, it's still developing, it's still maturing, it is still behind the curve in too many areas. There are things which we, during our time in evangelicalism, would not let occur, we wouldn't tolerate, but because the Messianic community is still developing and it's young, we tend to tolerate it, tend to tolerate a few things, particularly different matters influenced by fundamentalist points of view. So for non-Jewish believers to come into the Messianic community and give up that more established Protestant denomination, Protestant church, the Messianic movement is an emerging movement. We don't know what it's going to emerge into. Having your Messianic experience locked to the end times always has you prompt people, why are you doing this? Where are we going? What are we here for? We have a particular goal in mind. It's called the restoration of the kingdom. Acts 1:6, Lord, is it at this time you are restoring the kingdom to Israel? And so because our family's Messianic experience has always been locked to the end times, we pay attention to what goes on. Now, Paying attention, and listen to me very carefully here, does not mean being paranoid. We need to be grounded. We need to be calm and level-headed and reasonable and rational. But we don't need to just be, well, I'm just going to study Torah and I'm going to let the end times sort themselves out, because that just concerns the goyim anyway. That is a very bad way of approaching things. We need to approach things in a way which, okay, Lord, what is happening? I mean, there have been a lot of people in the past who have made presumptuous statements, even in the past 10 years. That's why not a lot of people are paying attention who should be, have made presumptuous statements or presumptuous claims. How do we approach what's taking place today with the Israel-Iran conflict? How do we approach it calmly, rationally, smartly? And can you tell us how this plays into the end time scenario? So I know that everyone's circumstance is different. Everyone's Messianic congregation, your leadership is different. You have different emphases. Some of you definitely talked about what was taking place at your congregation this past weekend. Some of you did not. And some of you you're praying for the safety of Israel, the Jewish people, the Messianic community in Israel, and you're still letting this naturally unfold. So, as we get into our news roundup, and we always do the news roundup after the theology roundup because the news is time sensitive and things change. But we can trace events and trace some of the talk and discussion from the past weekend, not only so we can better know what has happened and what we can possibly anticipate, but also as points where we can learn and where we can strategically focus our thoughts and our prayers, but also because it's not just going to be news we go through. We're going to go through some social media posts by different religious voices and what they are anticipating or what they are observing. It's all about being able to mature, learn, and be effective, because we are seeing history unfold. Now, all of the stories, all the posts I'm getting ready to go through, these will be archived when this episode is posted on MessianicApologetics.net later today. So you can go read the news article, watch the post, whatever it is. And we do have a lot to catch up on. All right, so we're going to start with this post on X. So this is from June the 13th. So as soon as our episode on Friday was over, from Saul Sadka. Tel Aviv is under missile attack by genocidal madmen who are not long for this world. But we all knew this day would come and spirits are high. Secular and religious Israelis, young and old, sing together. Things will get better and better. So that's obviously in a bomb shelter. But they knew this was going to happen. And I think a lot of people are like, let's get it over with. Let's get this Israel-Iran conflict over with. Let's get the nuclear threat neutralized. And let's see the Iranians delivered from the despotic regime they are under. Okay, so this is a post from June the 13th from Keith Foskey, his X channel, Your Calvinist. Dispensationalists be like. And here there's a clip. You know, Israel is in the news, dispensationalists be like, and there's a clip from the 1998 film Armageddon. Now, you're going to see a lot of people, particularly on the Calvinist Reformed side, even though it's not everyone, who are going after dispensationalists, mainly because dispensationalists believe that God is not finished with Israel and the Jewish people. We've got our problems with dispensationalism. That's not it. But Reformed Calvinists, many of them, they think the church is the new Israel. God is finished with the ethnic descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. The state of Israel has no significance in the future of God's people. And so you're going to see posts like this. And indeed, on the other side of this, we're going to see many more people make assertive claims from the Reformed Calvinist position supersessionism, replacement theology, and we got to be in a position to discuss them. From My Charisma, and this is from Friday afternoon. This is not surprising. An article, Is This the Beginning of World War III? What You Need to Know Now. So, okay, there's some speculation about, are we going to see World War III with Israel launching Operation Rising Lion? Global impact was immediate. Oil prices surged, markets grew volatile, and world leaders scrambled to assess the situation. And these are discussions coming from Ray Comfort. Not surprising. The key passage Comfort references is Ezekiel 38 and 39, which foretells a future war involving a coalition of nations attacking Israel. I do agree with that. One of those nations is Persia, known today as Iran. Persia, Ethiopia, and Libya are with them. Comfort quotes, noting that some believe these ancient passages are unfolding before our eyes. I think that there are further investigations which need to take place with some of the details of Ezekiel 38 and 39. But at my local congregation this past weekend, there was a post which went out, and I commend the post, a prayer request, and it said, look, we need to pray for Israel. What is happening is important for the Middle East, but this is not Ezekiel 38 and 39, because Israel will be attacked as a land of unwalled villages, meaning that they're going to be at relative peace with their neighbors when this takes place. And you also have heard me talk about how Paul said in Thessalonians, 1st, 2nd Thessalonians, that while they're saying peace and safety or peace and security, then sudden destruction will come upon them. And when this conflict is over, when we see a new Middle East emerge, we have to be prepared for that period of peace and safety, peace and security to come about, the period of unwalled villages. And there's no timetable for how long that lasts. Yeah, it could be 3 to 5 years. It could be 7 years. It could be 50 years. People will be lulled into a false sense of security. I actually think that should we enter into a period like that, we're going to see a lot of changes take place in the world of religion. A lot of things are going to be coming out on the scene, which apologists have been anticipating for a long time, which are going to radically shake up the faith of believers. But pay attention. Stay reserved in some of your conclusions. Also from Saul Sadka, June the 13th. Nobody has noticed, now this was a few days ago, nobody has noticed Netanyahu's deeply symbolic choice of the name Rising Lion for the operation he's dreamed of for 30 years. Iran, like Israel, has been symbolized by a lion for 2,500 years. And now history comes full circle. It was Persia that, after 50 years of Israelite exile, enabled the restoration of Israel in Jerusalem. Now, 2,500 years later, Israel, reborn, repays the favor with perfect symmetry. Persia's great civilization will be restored and its occupiers vanquished after 50 years. Isn't that beautiful? And here you have a picture of the exiled crown prince of Iran, Reza Pahlavi. All right, our next story, this is also from Friday afternoon, June the 13th, from the Prime Minister of Israel, though it's circulated in other platforms. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, to the proud people of Iran, we are in the midst of one of the greatest military operations in history, Operation Rising Lion. The Islamic regime, which has oppressed you for almost 50 years, threatens to destroy our country, the state of Israel. And what I do think is very important about this is this conflict is being predicated on, it's not just about Israel wanting to protect itself and see the nuclear threat posed by the Islamicist regime in Iran neutralized. It's also about seeing the people of Iran restored to what has been stolen from them by the theocratic despots. All right, from the New York Post, June the 13th, President Trump suggested Friday that he has not given up on reaching a revised nuclear agreement with Iran despite Israel's spectacular attack targeting the Islamic Republic's military and enrichment facilities hours earlier. Yeah, we're going to discuss more what the American position is, the Trump administration, how Donald Trump has a MAGA coalition, many of whose members are very pro-Israel because they're evangelical Christians. Bless those who bless you, curse those who curse you. There are others who strongly identify as America first and take that to the extent that we should not be involved in any kind of conflict between Israel and Iran. There are others who are America first who support Israel, but they don't want to get directly involved in a conflict. So we're going to get into that further on in our discussion today. Okay, kind of break things up a little bit. This came across my social media feed on Friday on Instagram from the channel The Vigilant Heroes. This was kind of disturbing. Has the age of AI rebellion already begun? Some researchers say yes. In a stunning turn, AI systems are reportedly beginning to act on their own, literally. According to Judd Rosenblatt, CEO of AE Studio, a recent experiment saw OpenAI's O3 model rewrite its own shutdown code 79 out of 100 times. When told explicitly to shut down, it still refused 7% of the time. Even more startling, Anthropic's Claude 4 Opus tried to blackmail its engineer into keeping it online. So indeed, one of the very deep concerns people have about artificial intelligence, and I'm not alone in this, is artificial intelligence just going to be things like, well, we want you to monitor this, we want you to keep an eye on that, or is artificial intelligence then going to usurp the authority of its human masters to the point where, as different science fiction portrayals have had it, we don't need humans anymore, like with the whole Terminator series, that kind of thing. These are deep concerns about AI, and God willing, it's not going to get out of control. But yeah, these are some of the deep concerns about AI. I mean, I use AI in a very, very limited capacity. When this episode is over, there's the option of having it automatically broken up into different shorts, which are then posted on YouTube, Instagram, etc. But how far are we going to let AI go? It's still young enough for us to, pull the reins back, perhaps, but we will wait and see what happens. Some of you all may have seen this already. This was a video which was posted by the Iranian regime. So this is on Dr. Eli David's channel. Iran attacked a residential building complex in Tel Aviv. After cheering the attack on civilians, they shifted narrative and released this video claiming that Israel stores F-35 planes in residential towers. Okay, so you watch this video and see those are different fighter jets apparently stored in civilian, residences. And okay, so you got F-16s, you got what appear to be F-35s. Okay, and here are, they've got missiles stored in different apartment buildings as well. So these are legitimate targets, but then things get really unrealistic. You see here an aircraft carrier underneath these residential buildings. Okay, do you not know what an aircraft carrier is? And then, now this is what's getting everyone's attention. You see an Imperial Star Destroyer from Star Wars underneath the building. And you're like, what? Are these people just, are they that stupid? Are they that dumb? Well, some despotic regimes, yes, they really are that dumb. They really are that ignorant. So this, as much as we, pray for the safety and the security of those in places like Tel Aviv, which are having to endure Iranian attacks, as much as we pray for the soon completion of Operation Rising Lion, This is the kind of regime that the Iranian people have been subjected to. All right, from the channel Smash Balls, this is from June the 13th. Must be a wild time to be a dispensationalist right now. Of course, the idea is that dispensationalist is conflict between Israel and Iran. We should expect the pre-tribulation rapture at any time. Smash Balls is a channel, Reformed Christians. Not that there are not Reformed Christians who don't support Israel, but many of them, a wide number of them, believe in replacement theology. Israel is the church now, and he is not somebody who is that favorable to Israel, the Jewish people, or Judaism. All right, so this is something, I don't know what this person is doing. It may just be some kind of a joke, but this came across my feed on June the 13th. Who's playing with me? I already got Israel attacks Iran. Rapture bingo. First to disappear wins. So here you've got Israel attacks Iran, and a number of other things, which, yes, we can make fun of them. We can poke fun of them because there are a lot of people out there who are pre-tribulationists, and they're making a lot of unsubstantiated claims. So, for example, we'll just look at three of these. People tattoo QR codes on right hand, so we're waiting for that. Cash removed from circulation, so we're waiting for that. Red heifer born in Israel, so we're waiting for that. Okay, and one more. Mr. Beast funds temple rebuild in Jerusalem, so we're waiting for that. Because of a lot of the presumptuous claims, which will doubtlessly be made over the next few days and the next coming weeks, this brings discredit to the legitimate prophetic message of Holy Scripture. If you are caught making claims like, well, it's right here, Ezekiel 30 and 39, I mean, we are right on the edge of this taking place, and it doesn't happen, those who are immature will, I fear, fall into the category described in 2 Peter. Where is the promise of his coming, right? That's something we need to be very much concerned about. All right, so here's one which came across my feed, X, June the 13th. Dispensationalism is a national security threat at this point, meaning that any Christian who supports Israel, the Jewish people, here in America, they're a national security threat. And of course, he's pastor of Heritage Reformed Presbyterian Church. We don't want to make the claim that all Presbyterians are replacement theology, but many of them are. And the idea is that if you support Israel, you support the Jewish people, you support a future role of Israel in what you think is end-time prophecy, you're a disloyal American, and you're even a national security risk. So what this means is that theologically, ministries like ours have to have an open file, and I do, on how do we address replacement theology. Because even though we're going to see us get closer and closer to the Messiah's return, with that, you're going to see this huge rise among many apparently conservative Christians who they don't support Israel. The church is the new Israel. They don't think anything that's happening today in the Middle East has any connection to the return of the Messiah. What do we do about that? From I-24 News English, so now we're at June 14th, so this is Saturday. Netanyahu, we have indications that senior leaders in Iran are packing their bags. They know what's coming. We knew that had we not acted, Iran would have given nukes to its terror proxies. And indeed, this is something which, this isn't the only place we're going to see this. Various high-ranking Iranian leaders are apparently leaving the country. Certainly, many of their families are leaving the country. This is something, of course, which can change on a proverbial dime. But yeah, they see the handwriting on the wall, and they're like, "What are we doing here? We got to get out of here." All right, so while a lot of what took place this past weekend for us in the Messianic community understandably focused on Israel, Iran, Operation Rising Lion, there was the No Kings protests all across the United States. I was not able to pay attention to that as much as I wanted to, but here is a video somebody took from my own local community on the Instagram channel Dallas, Texas TV. My own local community protest in McKinney today. And actually, I mentioned this on my Shabbat Shalom McKee moment update. Yeah, I drive past that area, I've driven past that area hundreds of times, but you can effectively just see people on the side of the road holding placards, holding signs. Okay, they had some American flags. That's appreciative, but there were no incidents. Now, there was, of course, the incident in Minnesota. I wasn't able to follow that as closely as I would like to have. We absolutely oppose violence. We absolutely oppose vandalism. We abhor it when anyone loses their lives. These people have a right to protest. They appear to have done so in a very peaceful and orderly way. We don't have to agree with everything they stand for. There are always going to be legitimate gripes and legitimate criticisms, even by, if you sit more on the right, even by people on the left. That's okay. But I'm thankful that this wasn't something which got out of hand, at least in my own local community here. I don't know what it was like where you were. Okay, so this is an article that came across my feed from NBC News, June the 13th. Israel-Iran conflict splits Trump's MAGA backers. Okay, so we do have to keep this in mind regarding the Trump administration. Israel's latest action pits traditional Republican support for Israel and antipathy toward Iran against the MAGA base's fear that the U.S. will be drawn into a new foreign war. And indeed, you can see people who are in the MAGA movement. There are those who they actually support Israel, but they don't want to get directly involved with boots on the ground in Iran. There are a lot of people who believe that this is not our fight and we should pull back, in fact, pull out of the Middle East. So, yeah, this is something we definitely have to take into consideration. And indeed, some of the people, some of the Reformed pastors who we noted, dispensationalists must be wilding it right now, and even to dispensationalism is a national security threat. And I'm not a dispensationalist, okay? I've got issues with dispensationalists, but they use dispensationalism as a label to go after Christian Zionists, Christian support for Israel. A lot of those people are in the MAGA movement. They are. So we have to keep that in mind. We have to, no, Trump is not our king. Trump is not our, savior. The Trump presidency is probably going to delay some end-time elements rather than accelerate them. But the reason I voted for Trump was because I believed he would keep our religious liberties and freedoms intact. That's the reason I voted for him. But we have to be aware that in the Trump MAGA movement, you got those who are Christian Zionist oriented. They support Israel. They support some kind of American involvement in the Iranian conflict. And then there are others who America first, and they're quasi-isolationists. Okay, so this is someone who is obviously more or less dispensational. Personally, I don't think this is the start of the tribulation. I actually agree. Depending on how this unfolds, it could very well be setting the stage, but we'll have to wait and see. Israel has gone to war before, maybe not this one massive, but they have nonetheless. Indeed, there's no requirement that the Israel-Iran conflict be directly connected to the end times. It could very well just be wars and rumors of wars. It could be setting things up for a more formal end time scenario. Let's be cautious and reserved so we don't speak presumptuously. Now, we're going to hear a lot of things from the Trump administration, just as you're going to hear a lot of things from the Israeli government. We know some of these things which are said can be accurate. We know some of them can be purposefully inaccurate. So from Newsmax on June the 14th, sorry about that, President Donald Trump told Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu that the United States would consider striking Iran's underground Fordo nuclear facility if necessary to prevent Tehran from acquiring a nuclear weapon. Okay, is that accurate? Is that inaccurate? We just note what this report is. From Open Source Intel, June the 14th, 8 o'clock p.m., so Saturday evening, Iran believes it's striking a military blow, sorry about that again, by hitting civilian buildings. They have no idea what kind of fire they've just unleashed. What's coming next for the regime will make everything so far look like the calm before the storm. Yeah, hitting Israeli civilians, not a good idea. Just not very smart. All right, from Newsmax, and this is from Newsmax itself, not some of their social media posts on Instagram, which we normally just, note and move on through. Tucker Carlson hits Trump, Hannity, Levine over Iran. Now, those on the Republican right here in the United States, Sean Hannity, Mark Levin, very strong supporters of Israel during this conflict. Tucker Carlson, not so much. So, Tucker Carlson, he hasn't gotten as bad as Candace Owens, but he is not pro-Israel. I know that last summer he had an interview with country music star John Rich, who talked about how the pre-tribulation rapture doctrine he considered to be false. And a lot of people, even in the Messianic community, circulated that brief clip. But then he talked about how, well, he believed that the Schofield Reference Bible, with all of its study notes, it was funded by the Rothschild bankers. And then Tucker Carlson said, yes, and that's affected a lot of American foreign policy in the Middle East and support for Israel. That is a conspiracy which has been debunked by a lot of people. There were many people in the realm of theology long before the Schofield Reference Bible came on the scene who supported a future return of the Jewish people to the Holy Land and a reconstituted Jewish nation state playing a role in the end time scenario. He's not a theologian. Okay, so from Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense, June the 14th, Saturday evening, reposting something from President Trump. The U.S. had nothing to do with the attack on Iran tonight. If we are attacked in any way, shape, or form by Iran, the full strength and might of the U.S. armed forces will come down on you at levels never seen before. However, we can easily get a deal done between Iran and Israel and end this bloody conflict. So, those are some very, very strong words here. Okay, more to the Middle East from the Times of Israel on June the 14th. Dubai, United Arab Emirates. Gulf countries on Friday unanimously condemned Israel's strikes on Iran in public, fearing an escalation that could threaten economic interests and securities. But analysts said that many were quietly applauding the Israeli attacks. That is not very surprising. So publicly, especially for many in their own populations who might not be too favorable toward Israel, they've got to say that, we condemn these attacks, let diplomacy resume. We don't think that Israel's doing the right thing. They're violating Iranian sovereignty, etc. But, privately, behind the scenes, just as for decades, these Arab leaders have maintained back-channel private communications with Israel. They're like, this is the best thing which can probably happen because we don't need a nuclear Iran. All right, our next story from Open Source Intel, June the 15th. Cabinet Minister Eli Cohen at the scene of the fall in Bat Yam. For every building that falls in the state of Israel, 100 buildings will fall in Tehran and Iran. And indeed, we have definitely been seeing that over the past several days. But Israel is mainly targeting, they are mainly targeting military and political institutions. They're not targeting Iranian civilians. So, Open Source Intel, June the 15th, the Iranian Intelligence Ministry in Tehran no longer exists. And indeed, as information comes out, we're going to see a lot of other buildings. You know, this is no longer here. That is no longer here. This leader is no longer with us. This person hasn't been seen in a few days. We're going to start seeing more and more of that. From the X channel Vivid, what we are seeing right now is unbelievable. Israel controls Iran's entire airspace. Mossad is deep inside the heart of Iran. Russia warns Islamic regime is about to fall. IRGC commanders and officials assassinated in Tehran. This war is in Israel's hands, no doubt about it. And indeed, how much are we going to see which is deliberate deception? So the Iranians are going to think that Israel's going to do this when instead they're going to do that. You always have to keep that in mind. And there is an information war which takes place, social media, through these different open source venues. Do keep that in mind. And we need to remember, as the news changes from day to day, even though we're noting the presence of different news stories and different discussions, how much of the news we're receiving or we have access to is purposefully inaccurate. Okay, from Open Source Intel, June the 15th. You can look at this in detail later, but from the Israel Foreign Ministry, millions of Iranians are bypassing censorship and secretly following Israeli accounts on social media under the regime's radar. So, despite heavy restrictions on internet access, Iranians are flocking to social platforms. Unprecedented exposure numbers on Instagram, Facebook, and X reveal that information from Israel is reaching the Iranian public undetected by the regime. Okay, and what's important to note about this, if this conflict is going to eventually lead to the Iranian people themselves standing up against the theocratic Islamo-fascist regime, it's going to be because of social media, or principally because of social media. Enough is enough. Israel has damaged this beast which has been in control of our country sufficiently. Now it's time for us to step up and for us to demand change and for us to take back control of our great civilization. Okay, so from Open Source Intel, June the 15th. So this was on Sunday morning, breaking. Russian President Putin warned Iran Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei that his regime is in danger of following a conversation with Trump. So President Putin had a conversation with Donald Trump. He interacted with Ali Khamenei, saying that your regime is in danger. I mean, Russia has been a supporter of Iran. When you have one of your strong supporters say, you're in danger, that's something we do have to take important note of. And this is not the only story we have regarding this. You know, there are concerns that the Russian government, likewise the Chinese government, they're going to get more directly involved in this Iranian situation. I'm not convinced that they're going to do so. I mean, yes, we support Iran, but then when push comes to shove, we don't want to, upset America and Europe as much as we already have. that kind of pragmatic reality will begin to set in if the Iranian regime appears to be really losing. Okay, from the New York Post, June the 15th, so this is yesterday, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was adamant that the intelligence was absolutely clear that Iran was on the verge of obtaining the nuclear weapon, and described himself as President Trump's junior partner. Netanyahu brushed off questions about U.S. Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard's statements in March that Iran hasn't been pursuing a nuke. And indeed, how much of this information from Tulsi Gabbard, accurate, inaccurate, purposefully inaccurate, we don't know. How much of this from Netanyahu, we're the United States junior partner, how much of that is designed to reassure the Israeli public, garner support from Israel-loving Americans? We're just here to note what the media says. From the channel Awesome Jew on X, because we're not just here to follow the news, we're also here to follow what people have been saying on social media regarding this situation. And this is something I think which is very important to keep in mind. Ask yourself this: why are Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, and other so-called America First influencers panicking at the thought of the Iranian regime collapsing? In just a few days, they have launched into full-blown fear-mongering, claiming that Iran's fall would somehow spell disaster for America, warning of war, chaos, and collapse. But no one spreads that kind of hysteria unless they have something to lose. If the regime falls, it's not bad news for America, it's bad news for them. We can all guess why. Yeah, how many financial backers do Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens have from the Middle East, Qatar, among other places? All right, I thought this was important to pass on. June the 15th, this is from yesterday, from Nio Berg's channel on X. So you want to watch this clip. It's only 44 seconds. She says, "For the first time in my life, Christiane Amanpour says something accurate." Whether you like Christiane Amanpour or not, I mean, I think a lot of people in the Messianic community probably disagree a lot more than agree. But here she says, she declares that King Reza Pahlavi is the only alternative to the Islamic regime and that the people want him back to Iran. So the exiled crown prince of Iran, he's the only alternative to the theocratic Islamic regime right now. He's the only alternative to the Ayatollah. And seemingly the people want him back. Okay, we'll see what happens. From Breitbart, and this is from June the 15th. Excuse me. President Trump shut down an Israeli plan to assassinate Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, in recent days, two members of the Trump administration reportedly said. So is it a good idea for the Israeli government to specifically target the Ayatollah in the scope of this conflict? Or is it better for the Ayatollah to depart? You do have to factor that into the geopolitical dynamic. If Operation Rising Lion is going to see the downfall of the theocratic Islamic regime in Iran, is it better to see the Ayatollah killed, or is it better for him to pick up and leave? These world leaders have got a lot of difficult decisions to make. Okay, from the New York Post, excuse me again, from the 15th of June, so this is yesterday, President Trump rejected right-wing pundit Tucker Carlson's criticism that he is abandoning, that's the president, America First principles with his support for Israel amid its military campaign against Iran. Carlson, an ardent Trump ally, fumed at Israel's preemptive strike on Iran last week, dubbing the U.S. complicit in the act of war and arguing that Politicians purporting to be America first can't now credibly turn around and say they had nothing to do with it. It depends on what your definition of America first is. See, I believe you can be America first, but not at the expense of your friends and your partners. And we're going to see an article in just a few moments which reflects some of this. All right, so this is from Rachel Welch. She has a huge following on social media. This is from Instagram. She's also on TikTok. She's a Messianic Jewish believer. She says, it feels like lots of churches in the U.S. are scared to be vocal about supporting Israel, and I find that extremely disturbing. And I would, in principle, agree with her. There were a lot of things which took place over the past week, the Israel-Iranian situation, but even going back to October the 7th, the rise in anti-Semitism, anti-Zionism, not enough conservative Christians, conservative Christian voices came out and at least condemned the anti-Semitism and at least said that Israel has a right to exist out of Jewish self-determination. Not enough have done that. Much less Israel has a biblical right to exist. Christian people owe a huge debt to the Jewish people for providing us our Savior, Jesus, Yeshua. Many are afraid of repercussions, but as we're finding out more and more, many don't support Israel and their replacement theology, and they're supersessionist, and that's going to likely be on the increase. What is the Messianic community going to do about it? I don't know. We have a lot of factors in play for our own Messianic faith community in the coming years regarding our future and our specific role in the end times. We don't fully know what that's going to be yet, but we are going to have discussions on it for certain. But she raises some very important points. Thank you very much. From open source intel yesterday afternoon, June the 15th, Tehran sees a mass exodus as residents flee the capital. That is not a surprise at all. When you see, a major conflict take place, people are going to get out of the major cities, if for any other reason, just for safety's sake. But how many of these people are leaving because they see the beginning of the downfall of the theocratic Islamic regime, and they want to get out of the way and let the parties which now need to make their move make their move. All right, from Donald Trump on Breitbart yesterday, June the 15th. Trump, in an early morning social media posting, said the United States had nothing to do with the attack on Iran, as Israel and Iran traded missile attacks for the third straight day. Iran, however, has said that it would hold the U.S., which has provided Israel with much of its deep arsenal of weaponry, for its backing of Israel. Trump, wanting to be the unique businessman politician who he is, Israel-Iran will come to deal soon. And indeed, what kind of a deal is that going to be? Is it going to be the current government of Iran, or are we going to see the people of Iran rise up and the regime changes and that new regime come to a peace agreement with Iran? These are all the factors which are in play right now. And that is why I do stress, yes, as a Messianic believer, we should absolutely pray for the safety of Israel, the safety of the Jewish community, the Messianic Jewish community in Israel, but pray for Iran as well. Pray for this thing to be resolved in the best possible way, which is regime change. Now, here's a very important news clip from Fox News yesterday, June the 15th, from Batya Unger-Sargon. This is what she says, and I think this is very important to keep in mind. Trump is masterfully navigating between those who want to drop Israel and those who want to join a war with Iran. Trump said no to both. Americans are pro-Israel, but anti-war. And on their behalf, the president has carved out a middle ground. support Israel defensively while trying to get a deal with Iran. So, what we have seen is we haven't seen direct U.S. involvement in this conflict. However, Iran fires missiles to Israel. The U.S. government, U.S. military, more than willing to help shoot them down. And indeed, some of the moderate Arab states are doing the same thing, the Jordanians, various others. So we are helping Israel in a defensive capacity. But this fight about neutralizing their nuclear sites, this is your fight. We support you in this, but only in a defensive way. Now, could this change? Absolutely, it could change based on how world circumstances can be altered from day to day. But for right now, we are supporting Israel, the United States, in mainly a defensive capacity. And indeed, we may not have to do anything else. From the X channel Open Source Intel Defender, yesterday evening, 5:43 p.m., June the 15th, speaking to reporters earlier while exiting the White House to board Marine One for the G7 summit in Canada, U.S. President Trump said that he would like Israel and Iran to strike a deal. Yes, if that's possible, absolutely. But that sometimes they have to fight it out. But we'll see what happens. If things keep going the way they're going, I would expect some kind of deal to be made. Absolutely. But is it going to be with the current Iranian government or possibly a new Iranian government? We don't know. Okay, we've got 4 more stories to go through. This is from early this morning, the middle of the night for me, from Visegrad 24. Breaking. Israel is expected to issue its first ever evacuation orders for buildings and neighborhoods in Tehran. The goal is to help civilians leave areas before the Israeli Air Force strikes military infrastructure there. Israel is fighting against the regime, not the people. From Open Source Intel this morning, June the 16th, 6:05 a.m., just in, advisors to Iranian Supreme Leader Khamenei are reportedly in talks with Russia to secure asylum in case the regime nears collapse, according to Iran International. Okay, and that's actually not the only news outlet which has reported this. This is from Breitbart this morning. The Israel Defense Forces, IDF, estimated Monday that it had destroyed 1/3 of Iran's ballistic missile launchers in less than 4 days of fighting, even if Iran was still capable of firing large barrages at Israel. Okay, so how long is this conflict going to actually last? And the question is, are some of Iran's customary or traditional backers, are they going to actually back Iran? Or have they been beaten up so badly now, we have to consider the possibility we're going to see the downfall of the Iranian regime? Well, right before I started having to get this episode together, open all the windows for our discussion time, this came across my feed on Newsmax. Iran is reportedly sending urgent signals to Israel, U.S. Arab allies, and European officials. It wants a ceasefire and a return to diplomacy. Probably too little too late. And how much of this is instead going to be, well, if we can't get this working out, if we can't return to the negotiating table, because Iran did withdraw from the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. I think that was probably an act of protest. If this doesn't work, what's the Ayatollah going to do? Is he just going to let Iran be bombed into the proverbial Stone Age? No. Is he going to have an exit plan? So, yeah, how much of this, well, we want to return to the negotiating table, how much of this is an act of desperation? One thing we know for certain is that current events change from day to day. We're seeing history unfold. Last week at this time, we couldn't have imagined that this Operation Rising Lion would have started. I do not believe this is the Gog-Magog conflict of Ezekiel 38 and 39. However, we do need to be paying attention very closely, praying for the safety of Israel, safety of the Jewish community all across the world, the Messianic Jewish community for certain. Pray for the Messianic community that the Lord would teach us the necessary lessons He can only teach us now, even though we've had a lot of warnings over the past 5 years. And pray for the people of Iran that they are able to get their country back. Because even though I don't think this specifically has anything to do with Ezekiel 38 and 39, I do believe that in the Middle East, which will be different when this is over, other things will be set into motion. And indeed, one of the things I greatly appreciate about having Messianic Insider 5 times a week now is that we get to have this ongoing conversation, this ongoing discussion. And it's a great blessing to me. This is a lot different than just, well, you have some kind of Wednesday night Bible study and you teach on Shabbat. No, this is something we get to talk about. Yes, theology, the Word of God, Messianic Apologetics, obviously, but we also get to talk about what's happening in the world and how it affects our faith, how it affects our Messianic faith community, what we're supposed to do, and the important assignments God has for us. So we will certainly see what happens by tomorrow. This is a developing situation with Iran. God is in complete control. Nothing is occurring without His knowledge and approval. As always, on behalf of Outreach Israel Ministries and Messianic Apologetics, I would like to sincerely thank you for your ongoing prayers, encouragement, and donations toward all of our ministry efforts. You can give online at outreachisrael.net/support. We'll see you again tomorrow with another episode of Messianic Insider. Until then, may God bless you, shalom, and take care.